Olá, seus caralhos! This is jorgiguel. Welcome. Now, this is a bit unusual of a video. This is a reaction video, which I try to avoid for the most part. I generally don't have that many reactions. I'm a very silent person, generally speaking. And when I'm reacting to videos, I tend to be very internal. However, this video is with Magic the Gathering, which is one of my favorite versions. You know, it is my favorite card game. It's the game I still play pretty much the most. I've been playing it for years now, and I am interested to see. So this is a video where, let's see, where he basically tries to guess how good Magic cards are. And I'm quite interested to see what he's going to say, because, I mean, I don't really have any achievements in Magic, aside from playing it for a very long time, but I'm pretty good at Magic, I'd say. I'm at least mechanic-wise. Probably not in decision-making, but mechanic-wise, I tend to be very good. And also pretty decent. But hey, like every player, I've made good guesses, and I've made bad guesses on Magic cards and other cards, so I kind of want to see how his reaction is going to be. So without further ado, let's just put this in. Hopefully, this will not be striked, but if it is what it is. So let's see what he has to say.
For the record, never played Magic whatsoever.
Yes.
I've never even looked at a Magic. The only actual exposure to Magic, I don't know if you watched South Park, but they did a video or an episode on Magic the Gathering.
Very good episode.
I haven't watched it.
It's very funny.
I know.
One of the most ridiculous things they've ever done, but I was laughing the entire time.
Yes.
Today we're going to do the opposite, right? You're going to have to guess how good a Magic card is.
Okay.
It was at this moment that he knew. He f***ed up.
And
oh, yeah.
I know you haven't played Magic.
Magic the Gathering, compared to Hearthstone and Legends of Runeterra, which are the two other big card games. I mean, obviously you also have Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, but those two are still mostly popular in card base. Digital, you know, like Hearthstone, there's only really Legends of Runeterra. You kind of have the new Yu-Gi-Oh! On Steam. I don't know if there's outside of Steam that's also gaining traction, but it still follows the same logic of the card game Yu-Gi-Oh! It's not like Hearthstone and Legends of Runeterra that is built entirely with digital in mind, and so they play with mechanics that would be impossible to implement in, you know, real life, such as Discover and Manifest and all that. So Magic the Gathering, the way cards function and the way that they are evaluated is very different. There are cards in Hearthstone that are broken that would be utterly garbage in Magic, and the other way around. You know, cards that are utter garbage in Hearthstone that would be insane in Magic. So I'm quite interested to see how this goes.
Magic at all. So some key differences from Magic to Hearthstone. The first one is you never attack a minion. So you never attack a creature directly.
Exactly.
But you always attack your opponent, and they choose to block or not.
In that way, it's basically like Legends of Runeterra. It's basically like Legends of Runeterra. You attack, and your opponent decides how they block.
The second big difference is that damage is temporary. So in Hearthstone, if like a 2/2 fights a 5/5, the 5/5 becomes a 5/3. In Magic, it goes back to being a 5/5 next turn. So if you want to kill a creature, you have to deal all the damage in one turn.
Okay.
And the third big difference is that in Hearthstone, you get 1 mana crystal every turn. In Magic, that's not true. In Magic, you have cards that are lands.
Yes.
And then you have to play
the most infuriating
lands,
part
and
of
they
Magic.
are basically mana crystals, but you're not guaranteed to have one a turn. You have to draw them.
Yeah,
so
it is the most infuriating part about the Magic. It's the flooding, which is basically when you draw too many lands and not enough cards to use the lands, or the screwing, which is when you draw too many cards, but you don't draw enough lands to play those cards.
In Magic, if a card costs 11, you're usually not going to play it until turn, 18 or 20, if you have no acceleration, because you're just not going to have drawn 11 land cards.
I mean, if you're playing fair Magic, or you're just playing, casual, sure. But on competitive, nah. 11 mana is nothing in Magic. That's the power of acceleration.
By turn 11, naturally.
Oh, God.
So, yeah, those are, I think, the big key differences, and then we can talk about certain specific differences as I show you the cards.
Sounds
Yes.
good. One more question. How many cards do you draw at the start of the game?
You draw 7, and you can do as many mulligans as you want, but each mulligan you have to put a card back.
Oh, that's a cool mechanic. Wow.
So you
No,
can
it's
mulligan
not.
specific cards, right? You mulligan the whole hand or nothing at all. So you shuffle your 7 back, you draw
Yes.
a new 7, and you put 1 in the bottom of your deck.
Yes.
Then you can shuffle that back again, draw a new 7, and put 2 in the bottom of your deck.
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay.
So the first card that I'm going to show you is this one.
How do you pronounce that? Lano War?
Yeah, Lenore Elves.
Lano War.
Oh boy. These guys are so powerful that currently in Magic, Wizards has decided that they will never print a card like this ever again. They have not printed a card like this in years. A 1 mana drop in standard. They have printed it for like exclusive sets that are more designed for older formats, but for like the standard of Magic, they do not print 1 mana drop, the mana dorks as we call them, the 1 mana creatures that give mana, because it just opens the gate for massive like curves to happen, like playing a 3-drop a turn earlier or a 5-drop on turns earlier. They're very powerful, but they're not like obvious power. These are not obvious power. These are like the small like cog wheels in a machine. And these are like the important ones.
Wait, Elf. So
The difference between playing a Mana Dark turn 1 and not playing it on turn 1 is massive, essentially.
you need 1 green land to cast this, right?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I guess that's another relatively big difference.
Oh, yeah,
that
color.
you're not constrained by your colors, right? In Hearthstone, you're gonna be a paladin or a warlock. In Magic, there are 5 colors. You can play as many of those as you want, but you need the specific mana, right? So if your deck is only green, you'll have no problem playing this card on turn 1 because all your lands will be green. But if your deck is 5 colors, it might be hard to play this card on turn 1.
For deck building purposes, you could put as many colors as you want, but majority of the time you want to focus on like 1 or 2, I would imagine.
I would say 2 and 3 are the most common because there are a lot of special lands that add multiple colors.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, so like if you have a deck that is just red and green, you can have like 20 or 16 lands that add either red or green. Like if you're playing this card, you're gonna have to assume that you have the ability to cast it on turn 1, otherwise it doesn't make much sense.
For this card specifically, what is the like rotating arrow? Like refresh?
This
No,
is a
tap.
tap ability. It means it's an ability that you can use once per turn, basically, in lieu of attacking or blocking. And this ability basically says, instead of attacking or blocking this turn, I'm gonna use this ability. And it generates a green mana, which basically makes it function as a forest. It's a 1/1 creature that you can, each turn, you can turn into a forest temporarily, and then next turn it goes back to being a 1/1.
That's
You
a
can
really
turn into
weird
a
way to
forest
say.
again.
So tap ability is a very simple mechanic. Cards in Magic. So for example, cards in Magic, you can tap them. So you turn them sideways to do various abilities if they have it, if they have the ability. And when they are tapped in that manner, they cannot attack or block because they're tapped, because you can only block or untap with creatures that are, well, untapped, right? So it's that simple. It doesn't, and its ability is you tap it, you turn it sideways, and it gives 1 mana, and that's its ability. I don't know if he's gonna mention it though. If he's gonna mention.
Okay, so Lano War.
So he didn't mention it. Tap abilities cannot be used on the turn that the creature entered, unless they have haste, which would be charge or rush in Hearthstone and in Legends of Runeterra. Just like in Hearthstone, where creatures enter and they kind of, they can't really attack or do anything when they enter. The same applies to creatures in Magic. When they enter, they can't really attack and they can't activate their abilities unless they have like charge or rush from Hearthstone, or they have, or as we call it in Magic, haste.
Elves cost 1 green mana, and then like you said, you could either, so this card could also attack and defend, but you could also just use the ability to get another green mana, and it's a 1/1.
Yeah, it is a 1/1.
Let's just
Another important point is that you can tap it at any moment. So you can block and tap it to give mana during the blocking phase, which can allow for some very trick moments to happen.
Just imagine you did 7 cards in your opening hand that you would probably get 1 green mana to play this.
Decks have like 24 to 26 lands most of the time, so it's pretty rare to not have 1 mana.
I would probably imagine in a greenish deck that this card would be pretty useful. This is a 1/1 that you can play on turn 1 that basically gives you another mana. That seems like it's pretty decent. I think like from a Hearthstone perspective, this is like giving yourself a mana back, and that would be very, very powerful. So I would say this is pretty good.
All right, yeah, you were correct.
Yeah.
It is pretty good.
Let's go.
I was thinking that maybe you get this wrong because there is a Hearthstone card that's kind of similar, right? I think it's like a 2-cost 2/3, and while it's in play, you get a mana crystal, but if it dies, it's taken back.
Yeah,
Isn't that?
yeah.
And this card is not very good in Hearthstone, right?
I think if this card was in Hearthstone as a 1-mana 1/1, this actually might see play.
No,
Just for
it
the extra
wouldn't.
mana on turn 1.
It dies
Depending
to
on what the mana cost
rogue,
of this card would
to
be, this card would
mage.
probably not see
It
play
dies
at 2
to
or
anything
3,
that's a
but 1
page.
probably, yeah.
Yeah, no, this card is quite
I
good
know, he's
because,
right.
again, you can't just attack your opponent's minions, right?
And
So you
one-
just don't put this in combat if you don't want it to die.
Yeah.
And then like it accelerates and you get to play a 3-cost card on turn 2 or a 4-cost card on turn 3, or both.
This is like what ramping is.
Yes, this
in
is
Magic.
basic. Yes, this is ramping. This
Okay.
is
Okay.
If it lives, it's wild growth.
Okay, this is insane then.
Yeah, it's very good. It's a centerpiece of a lot of green aggressive decks when it's being legal. It's being legal on and off in different formats because there's rotation and stuff. But this is like one of the most iconic green cards. Like this is Green's thing. Green does this, other colors don't get to do this.
Yeah, this card is so broken,
go, I
Wizards
can't
has
believe I
not
got it.
reprinted it.
You did. Good job.
They do not want one mana dorks anymore.
get worse, but we'll go. What is the skull in the top right?
Black.
That's a different color of mana. That's a black mana.
Okay, Lord of Extinction, green and black, and then you also have to have 3 other mana. of any
Oh,
color
this
to play.
card.
Yeah, so this can be 3 red, a green, and a black, or, you know,
So for so nowadays this is trash. I remember this card. Nowadays this is trash. So this, I don't think this card ever saw play like competitive. It did see Commander play extensively, especially in like a specific combo deck that filled a lot the graveyard with cards, and so this would be a giant, and this would and then they would just throw this creature at people's face with a spell, kind of like Atrocity from Legends of Runeterra. The card where you sacrifice a creature and deal damage to a player equal to that creature's power. And that was kind of a phase where this card would see play there. But that was a short phase because Magic just got better over time. Especially Commander. Commander got very competitive. When this card played in Commander, it was still in its early stages where mostly casual, not really as today, where it's very aggressive. So I'd say this card, it's nowadays, very expensive for what it does.
2 green, 3 black.
This is also a creature. Lord of Extinction's
But
power
there
and
used to be a
toughness
time
are
where
equal
it
to the
was
number of
really
cards
good.
in your all graveyards.
So graveyard is basically if a card is used, it goes to the graveyard. If a creature dies, it goes to the graveyard. If you play a spell, it goes to the graveyard.
But it might still see
Okay,
play in
wow,
certain
this is an
decks.
interesting
So
card. This,
I don't know. I don't
this
know
is
if he's
dynamic in the
gonna.
sense that if you,
I don't know if he's gonna take it from a command from like a general standpoint. So it'll be like, oh well, this is not really that good, but it does see play in Commander. Or if he's just gonna go, no, this is trash. It never saw play. He could go either way because I don't know, because I'm a Commander player, so I obviously recognize this card because I've played with it, I've lost to it, I've won with it. It used to play in Commander, not anymore because Commander is now at a much higher level than it used to be. But I don't know what he's gonna say about the card. Outside of Commander, I don't think it's ever seen play. It might have seen play in like fringe, like combo decks.
you play this on the board and a card goes to the graveyard, it gets +1.
But nowadays, I don't
Yes.
think it's
when you play it, it's going to be as big as the number of cards in both graveyards, and then
That's normally a 200.
Oh my god.
It's
Wow,
gigantic.
This is a really scary card. In Hearthstone, if this card was in the game, this card would be very powerful. If you
Oh,
left it
yeah.
on board.
In Hearthstone,
The fact that it doesn't have
it'd
any
be
other
like a-
text, though. It's just a big stat line. Is a little iffy.
Yeah.
Not knowing other context of like Magic cards and how powerful effects can be, I don't know how great big stat lines are. But the fact that this can keep on growing for every single card you use is very powerful.
It dies to
Especially 'cause
removal.
It's for both players' graveyards. That
It
has
dies
be
to
nuts. By the
removal.
time you play this has to be a decent amount of stats. Especially
dies
if you're
to
putting this
removal.
into a deck. This would have to be pretty good. but is it actually good enough to see play?
No.
This card is going to teach me a lot
It's
about
trash.
how Magic works to see if big
It
stat
is
lines are
trash
good.
outside
I'd
of
say this is
Commander
probably about
because
average
you
to
can
weak.
combo
I
it
don't-
with cards.
Again, I don't know how strong
And even
these
then,
big stats
you
are
don't
in
see it
Magic,
play
but from a Hearthstone
anymore in
perspective,
Commander.
this card would have to be like you'd have to put this card down pretty fast for it to actually be useful.
No.
So I'd go with like average to bad.
Okay, close. It's actually just pretty bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is quite big, right? A lot of the time you play this is a 5-cost 10-10, which is quite big, and it can grow even bigger. Like sometimes it's a 20-20, right? And players start at 20 life. It's just lethal in one hit. But it's just very hard to get it through because it doesn't have any combat abilities. It doesn't have any protection, any effects. And people can just block, right? If you attack with your 20-20, they can just block with their Lenore Elves. And then you don't deal any damage to them.
So big stats in Magic aren't good then because you could just block it with a really small minion consistently.
Well, depends. There
on
can
stats.
be big stats that are good, but they usually come with like a different ability. All right.
So yeah, he did say it was trash. As I said, like Commander, he probably is not considering Commander. And even in Commander, it's not that good of a card. It used to be better, not anymore. But yeah, in Magic, stats are not as important because in Magic, there's just removal. You know, if you're in Hearthstone, your creatures are removal. In Legends of Runeterra, your creatures are removal because the damage stays. But in Magic, because the damage is always healed at the end of the turn for the creatures, it's just easier to kill creatures by just straight out removing. So removal in Magic is more powerful than the removal in other card games. You know, like your average, like a good example, right? For example, the in Hearthstone, there's the rogue card, the I don't remember, the Assassinate or something. That's a 5 mana, kill a creature, right? Or kill a minion. In Magic, that would cost 3 mana. And in many purposes, the cards that are played competitively that do the same effect are like 1 or 2 mana, you know? They have a few restrictions. They're like kill a creature that only costs 3 or less, something like that. But they still see play because most people play with smaller creatures in Magic because big creatures just die to small removal. So a big dumb creature is just a big dumb creature. The only time where stats matter is when there are very cheap creatures. So a 20/20 for 5 mana is pretty bad. A 4/4 for 2 mana though, that is pretty strong in Magic because it just costs 2 mana.
A new card.
Ooh, all right.
A new card.
Traumatize. So 2 blue mana
Oh,
and
this.
3 any other mana. This is a sorcery spell. Target player puts the top half of his or her library.
Nowadays, this card
into
is
his
trash.
or her
I don't
graveyard.
know
What
if
is
it
the
ever
library?
saw
It's your
play.
deck.
Oh, interesting.
If you have 40 cards,
So this card is bad, but I don't know if it ever saw play in the past. Because now I don't think it saw play in the past. Like in the past, spells were ridiculous in Magic. Magic
cards
is
in your
one of
deck,
those games
it's basically
where
discard the top 20.
Wow, this is a really cool mechanic. Okay. So this
It's
has a lot
milling.
of pros and cons. If you know a lot of your deck is just lands and you don't need any more lands, this is a very good card. Because then on average you get more powerful effects the later the game goes, you would hope. This is also a huge risk because half your deck is quite a bit. This card seems like you'd put into a very particular deck, and I would imagine, based on the last card as well, there's a bunch of cards that interact with how many cards are in your graveyard.
So just to be clear, this is target player, so you can use yours or on yourself or them.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Oh my god, that's actually really interesting too. Wow, this is a really cool card. This has to be very, very powerful. I'm gonna go with it's insane.
no.
Okay, actually, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's trash.
So the key is that in Magic, so in Hearthstone, if you're playing like a control battle or something, things go to decking a lot, right? You draw your entire deck a lot. In
Yeah.
Magic, you have 60 cards, and you play 4 of each card. So like, there's no, I'm gonna snipe your 1 Alexstrasza, and now you can't kill me
Yeah.
anymore. And given that people start with 60 cards, games very rarely go to decking. In the end, like,
Unlike Hearthstone, because in Hearthstone it's only 30 cards, so it's very easy to deck out. And as he said, legendaries you can only have 1, so it's like if you can counter that 1 legendary, you don't have to deal with it again. In Magic, you have 60 cards, which is double the amount. Rarely do games go into mill. There are decks that mill. There is a deck in Modern, which is a format in Magic, that its entire purpose is to mill the opponent's deck. And they mill, on average, around, I don't know, 10 cards per turn. And even then, they still can't win every single game. Because some decks just overrun them. They can't mill fast enough. It's just too many cards they have to go through. So yeah, milling in general is not that good in Magic.
You can look at this as, you know, instead of taking the top 20 cards of their deck, you remove the bottom 20 cards of their deck, which they would never get to anyway.
You know what's even funny? Yeah, I'm actually really sad I got this wrong, because here, I'm gonna link. This is a card in Hearthstone. That is the exact line you just said about thinking about just removing the bottom 5 cards of your opponent's deck is the exact same thing for this card. Like, it can be good, but people hated this card because of the effect that it had. But it seems so much better than it actually was. And what you just said reminded me so much of it. I don't know why I got this wrong. You're right.
It's traumatized card, and it evokes a lot of emotions too.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way of putting it, right? People have very strong feelings about it. All right, next card.
Brainstorm.
Oh my god. This card is one of the... I mean, it's not... Yes, it is one of the best cards out there that's legal to play in Legacy. I mean, it's a staple in Legacy. Pretty much if you're blue, you're playing with this card. That's how broken it is.
Just one
if you're not blue and you're not
it's
playing
instant.
with a card,
so
then you're
instant
stupid.
is you can cast it during combat, right?
During combat and during their turn.
So you draw 3
Any
cards
moments.
and then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. So you're drawing 3 and then putting 2 back, but you get to choose the way that you ordered the draws.
Yes.
And you get an extra card as well. This card can do a lot. If you need like a...
I'll just say one thing. The card is by itself not good. The reason why the card is broken in Magic is because there are a specific type of land that functions really well with it that are called fetch lands, where they basically, you can tap them, which is their ability, you sacrifice them, so you lose them, but you get to search your library for another land and you put it on the battlefield. And what you basically do with this card and those lands is you play this card, you put the 2 cards that you do not want to draw ever again on the top of your library, and then you break that land, you sack it, you fetch the land you want, and you shuffle the deck. Essentially, getting rid of the 2 cards that you don't want to never see them again. Hopefully. That's why the card is broken, because you're not actually putting 2 cards on the top for you to draw later. You're putting 2 cards on the top so you can get rid of them and don't have to draw them. By itself, the card isn't that amazing. It's the combination with an additional card that he has no information.
Potential removal immediately.
So I'm pretty sure he's going to say that it's not amazing.
This is a very versatile card. This has to be like at least decent. I can imagine that this is a card that you would want to put into maybe not even a particular deck. It just seems like generally this is a very good card. So I would say this is probably decent to good. I wouldn't say it's like good, mana breaking or anything, or like broken, but it seems like it's a pretty decent card.
Yeah, this is actually one of the best cards in the game. It is very, very strong. So there is a format called...
You don't need to be like it's unfair because he's working with information he doesn't have. He doesn't know that the card by itself is not broken. Okay, the card itself is actually not amazing. It's just a 1 mana, you draw 1 card. However, because of the existence of fetch lands, which is another type of card in Magic, the card is broken. So the card itself is not powerful. It's not the best card in Magic. It is the best card in Magic, one of the best cards in Magic, because there are fetch lands. So it's in conjunction with other cards, which obviously he doesn't have information about.
And there's a form where you can play almost any card, and it's called Legacy. Like, it's only excluding like the super busted ones. And this is arguably the best card in Legacy.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
And the reason this is so good is because in Magic, there are a lot of ways to shuffle your deck.
Exactly.
So what you do is you play this, you draw 3, and you put your 2 worst cards back, and then you shuffle your deck, and you don't have to draw them again.
Exactly.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes it even better. Yeah, that makes sense.
And you can even just hide your card from discard sometimes, right? There are some cards that, Minion, that you showed me last time, where it devours the highest costing card in your opponent's hand or something. If they play something like that, I can play Brainstorm and put my Alexstrasza on top. So now it's not in my hand anymore. And,
that's really
and then
good.
I'm gonna draw it next turn because
That's another way you can deal with it.
In Hearthstone, this card would be insane. Cruel Ultimatum.
Oh, this card. I think this card saw play. Nowadays, I think... Would this see play nowadays? In Standard. I'm talking about Standard. In Modern, I don't think it sees play. This used to see play in Standard, I think. This card is... And also saw play in Commander old times. Man, this card is... I remember playing this card. It's so fun to play this card. I mean, it's not fun if you're on the receiving end.
A lot of mana. So this is 2 blue, 3 black, and 2 red. Target opponent sacrifices a creature. Discards 3 cards, loses 5 life. You return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand, draw 3 cards, and then gain 5 life. Does sacrificing mean anything else besides just killing the creature?
You kill the creature, but they choose. So they choose one of their creatures to die. If they only have 1, you kill that. If they have 2, they choose one of the 2.
I'm so scared now because the last card wasn't flashy at all, and it was so good. This one looks like it's so flashy. Sacrificing a creature from your opponent gets the pick, it has to be at least decent. Discarding 3 cards seems very good, but again, like you said, lands are usually not as good later in the game, and this card seems like it's pretty expensive.
This card is good just from the draw cards, returning...
And then they lose 5 life. 5 life is a decent amount of life in Magic because you only have 20, so that seems decent. Then you also get the huge benefit of returning...
This card used to be very powerful.
Which can be very good.
Nowadays, I don't know if it's still as powerful, but it used to be.
I feel like this card's good. I don't think, again, it's meta breaking or anything, but this effect feels like it's very powerful for what it is. It seems like a huge tempo swing. Even if your opponent discards 3 lands and sacrifices their worst creature and loses 5 life, that's negligible because the effect that you're getting seems very good. But it is a very expensive card. So
kinda.
Is this card worth that amount of mana? That's the only question that's
just
in my
7
head. So
mana.
I'm gonna go with it's average, but it can be very powerful.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good description of it. This card has seen play, you know, in certain decks. It is very restrictive, right? Because as you said, it costs a lot of mana and a lot of specific mana. So it's seen play in some control decks that are using it as sort of a finisher. I don't think it was super meta breaking or anything because this deck could just have played something else instead. But it was a good card in this deck specifically.
In its time, the card was very powerful, but it was not meta defining, I think. But it was played when it came out. Once it rotated out, it didn't see any play, and in older formats, it had no place aside from Commander, which even in Commander, it doesn't really see that much play because in Commander is a multiplayer format, and that card only hits 1 player, which generally you don't really want in Commander.
Card.
Chomano? That's what you say? Chomano?
Yeah, Chomano. I'm not an English speaker, so...
So this is
prevent all damage that would be dealt
2 of any mana. Legendary creature.
Yeah, so what this
this is a rebel.
You can only have 1 in play at the same time. So you can put up to 4 in your deck if you want, but if there's 1 in play, you basically can't play the other.
So is this effect always active, or can you choose to use this or not?
It's always active. So
it's a passive
basically
effect.
A way of looking at this is it's a 2 infinity instead of a 2/2.
This can't die from creature combat, I guess. It has to die from an effect from a spell, or you have to sacrifice it or something.
Yes.
In Magic, you could use a minion to block any minion, which is... This looks like if you're just going against minions, this is a very powerful card because it's just infinitely just stopping damage to go to your actual phase.
I've never seen this card.
Though, right? To be clear,
I've never seen this card, so I assume it's garbage. However, I am seeing the Rebel tag there, and I know Rebels are a very powerful format, are a very powerful creature type. Back in the old Magic, but I'm not I don't think this ever saw play.
They attack with 3 things, they can only block 1.
But
I didn't play in this
one creature.
That's Magic the Gathering,
right?
10th edition.
Always blocking
I've
one
never
individual creature,
played
but
that
the other
edition.
2 creatures in the sense would attack face, right?
Yes.
It is a 2/2, so 2 infinites, like
you said.
it's
even white border, right?
Pretty decent for how much this mana how much this card actually costs. This is a card
No,
that
it's
like your
not white
opponent has
bordered.
to deal with at some point, just because if you're blocking,
It's a
that
2
much
mana
damage,
4/4.
Like this
I mean, it's
starts
a
to scale real fast.
4 mana 2/2,
And like,
which
you
is
could
pretty
block,
bad
like, a
in
20
Magic.
attack creature if there's that one in the game, and this card still lives. Like that seems very
Stats
good.
are not as
Oh my
important
God.
in Magic,
This-
but they're
I
still
feel like
important.
Inside my mind, this is a bait. Like this, but it seems good.
No, this is
I
a
have
bait.
to go with this card. It's probably good. Like it just,
No.
it seems like blocking a minion a turn feels like it's very powerful, and it feels like it can
No,
delay the game
it's
enough for you
garbage.
to actually get to
Trash.
wherever you need to win the game. So in that sense, I think it's good.
You
And
were
before what?
right. It was bait.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, okay. So the reason why it's not good is very simple. While his idea of it can block infinite creatures, can block for infinity, the problem is that doesn't help you win the game. And it ends right there. While the idea of blocking is very nice, and it works when you're against, for example, an aggressive deck. So, for example, a Face Hunter, right? If you're playing against a Face Hunter, you can, in Hearthstone, you can win against Face Hunter if your deck is just healing. The problem is, if your deck is just healing, you lose against every other deck. Because every other deck can just output. Because against Face Hunter, against the Quest Hunter, all you have to do is survive their damage until they run out of cards. And there you go. Then they just don't have enough damage to kill you. But against other decks, you can't do the same. And that's the same problem with this idea of, well, you can use it to block as many times as you want. That doesn't really help you win the game. That just helps you in very niche situations, which even then you have better cards that you would use instead of this 4 mana 2/2 that just whatever. It's pretty bad. This is garbage.
It's not very good. The problem with this is that like there are a ton of ways to deal with it that don't involve
too.
damage exactly, like a bunch of spells. And a lot of the creatures that you would want to block have ways of bypassing it. So the good ones, they all have evasive abilities, like they have trample, which would go through. They have flying, which means you can't block.
Oh right, yeah.
So in the end, like, and you said like 2 attack is good for the cost, but this is effectively, this costs 4.
Damn it, man! You're baiting me.
So next card.
Death Shadow. You need
Oh.
1 black mana.
Discard. Death Shadow. There's a deck built around this in Modern that's actually very powerful. Discard is very powerful. Again, as he said it before, stats don't matter in Magic that much unless you're paying like they're dirt cheap. If they're dirt cheap, then the stats matter. A 20/20 for 5 mana, garbage. It just dies to a 1 mana spell. But a 7/7 for 1 mana. Now that doesn't matter if it dies for a 1 mana spell because you're both only paid 1 mana to play the card. So it's pretty. This card is powerful right now. When it came out, but it did take a while for it to see play. It did take a while for it to see play.
It is
It needed
13.
to find a deck
Death
specific
Shadow
for it.
gets
But it's a very
minus
powerful
X,
card
minus
nowadays.
X, where X is your life. Oh wow. So at the start of this game, at 20 life, this is a 0/0.
Yeah.
You need to lose 7 health for this card to actually be playable at a 0/0.
Yeah, you need to be at 12 for it to be a 1/1.
As you take more life, I'm guessing that this card gets strong, or lose more life, this card gets stronger, just like the other effect.
Yes.
Yes.
This
so
is dynamic on the board.
Yeah.
Yes.
And to give you a little bit of context, this is a black card, and like black is relatively close to Warlock in
Okay.
the sense that a lot of the cards have like pain points.
Okay,
so
that's
there
a
are
good
some ways
comparison.
where you can deal damage to
Yes,
yourself for profit.
Warlock
So this
is
a
very
cheap
similar
card,
to
but like you
the
said, you
black
need to actually
color
damage
of
yourself to actually
Magic.
play it. So
A lot of cards are like
this is a 1
lose
mana
2
card,
life,
but you're
draw
not
2
playing this until
cards.
you have a So this is a card that you want to play a little bit later in the game. Also, by the time you
No,
play
you
this, if
play
you're
this on
playing
turn
12 life,
1
doesn't
in
seem very
its deck.
powerful. The way I'm going to look at this
Turn
is
1,
like, how
turn
fast
2.
can you cheat this card out for it to actually be
I
good?
think it's turn
And
2
if you can
that's
cheat it out to be
generally the
good,
most
like
consistent.
very early in the game, this card can be incredible. But again, like you said that
Yeah,
you
turn
can
2,
just
you
block
play
like a
this
big
card.
minion. This doesn't have any effect or anything. So this I think this is just bad then, right?
Final answer?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with. Oh god, yeah, I'm gonna go with
That
bad.
final answer.
No, it's actually good.
Oh come on!
It's
But
insane.
very context dependent because it's a card that has existed for a long time and it wasn't good for a long time, right? And then as more cards got released that interacted favorably with it, it became better.
The card didn't see that much play because Here's the saying. He's wrong in a variety of things. So the deck that it exists currently does not play with that many like modern cards. Modern as in recent cards. It plays with a lot of old cards. It's just that it took a few years for people to figure out how to build a deck around it. You know, it took a few years to build for them to figure out how to build a deck around it. It's not like other decks where they figure out how to build a deck very quickly. The card plays with cards that have seen play before this card was even printed. You know, they play with Thoughtseize, which is you lose 2 life and you make your opponent discard a card. You play with fetch lands, you play with shock lands, and it's not exactly as he's saying that as more cards came out, it got better, because that's not actually how the deck functions. A lot of the cards that play in the deck are cards that were old. It's just people didn't know how to build a deck, and it took them a few years to figure it out. And now it's a very powerful deck because you're essentially playing a 7/7 for 1 mana on turn 2, and while also disrupting your opponent. So yeah, it's a very powerful card nowadays. But yes, it did take
like, there are some lands you have to pay life to play them. So like you can play your land, you take 2 damage, then you discard your card, you take 2 damage, and like very quickly you are at a point where this becomes a little bit bigger. And it costing just 1 mana, you're right that you're not going to play this on turn 1, right? You're going to play this on turn 4 or 5, but then...
No, you play this on turn 2. What? Why you play Modern? You play this on turn 2. What are you talking about? But you need to lose 7 life by turn... for this to... No, not 7 life. 8 life for this to play, right? So you play Fetch Line, you crack it, you lose 1 life, you play Shock... You fetch the Shock Land, you lose 2 more life, you play a Thoughtseize, and you lose 2 more life. That's 5 life you've lost on turn 1, right? 5 life. So turn 2, all you need to do is another fetch land into Shockland. You've lost a total of 8 life by turn 2. So you can just, and if you have anything else like another Thoughtseize or another card that also takes away your life to play it, this can become like you can play this like a 4/4 for 1 mana on turn 2 while you've been disrupting your opponent by removing their best cards off their hand. This card is not a card you play on turn 4. This card is the card you play on turn 1, and you smack your opponent's face in.
Interactive spells. So like you can play this for 1 mana, it's a 4/4, right? And then you still get to do some other stuff that same turn. It's too early in the game where you have a lot of cards in your hand, and then it grows into a 6/6 or a 7/7, which for just 1 mana can be pretty strong.
So you need a critical mass of cards that work with this for it to be good enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you need good ways of damaging yourself.
Baneslayer Angel. Flying first strike.
This saw a lot of play when it was around in standard.
And lifelink on a 5/5.
I'm not nowadays. It's probably not that good, but during its time,
this is obviously
it was
good against
good.
demons and dragons. If you think you're gonna go against that type of creature, then this is very strong already. Without knowing how powerful flying is, it's probably good. First strike seems very strong in this type of game. If I'm playing 5 mana for all of these effects in Hearthstone, this card's very good. So you need 2 specific white mana, but you're probably gonna put this into a deck where you have like enough white mana for this to actually see play at 5. Even
I'm pretty sure this was very powerful during its time.
I think this is good. This seems like it's a pretty good effect. It's like basically a 5/5 with a bunch of benefits. And the fact that you're healing a quarter of your life every single time this does damage seems pretty good. So I'd go with it's good.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Yeah. It's a good card. It is very good versus certain decks and not that good versus others. Like if they're playing a control deck, they have ways of just killing it and their life doesn't matter that much. But versus any sort of creature deck, this just stabilizes the game so much.
If this is a card you would play, I think the card was played in control games, not control games, but in control decks. And it was a card you would play against creature matches. So if you were against decks that were heavy on creatures, you just play this, and there was nothing they could do. You would just block, or you would attack. You would gain life. They couldn't out damage the damage you were dealing to them, because that angel is basically a you kill them. If that angel attacks every single turn, you kill them in 4 turns. And while you're doing that, you're also healing for 5 each time you attack with it. So against creature matchups, that was a pretty powerful card. I guess, but I believe the deck would just take out the card in post, on sideboard and against other control decks. So yeah, it was a good card.
Time Warp. 2 blue
Oh,
with any mana. It's a
extra
spell.
turn.
Target player takes an extra turn after this one.
This type of effect is always powerful. I mean, nowadays, extra turns. So in current Magic the Gathering, in standard, extra turns cost up to 7 mana or more, and they're still considered to be too powerful. So I expect them to say that the card is powerful, because just from that aspect. Obviously every meta is different, and maybe when this came out it wasn't that good because the meta just didn't have maybe it was too fast for a control deck to play this card. But in general, extra turns in Magic is very powerful. Like, it is ridiculously powerful, to the point where in standard an extra turn for 7-8 mana is still too powerful and can just cause a lot of players to not want to play against those decks.
Oh my god. There is a card like this in Hearthstone. There was a card. It was a quest that you have to complete, and when you got it, it was 5 mana to take an extra turn.
I didn't know that. I didn't know there was any card like this in Hearthstone.
Basically, if you completed that quest, you would probably win the game the next turn. And this would be the exact same thing. You could tap all your mana, play this card, and then all your mana is untapped again, so you could do a bunch of stuff afterwards. My Hearthstone brain tells me this is insane.
But is it bait?
I think you're baiting me, but I also think this card's good. Like, if this is a Hearthstone card, I would play this card. I'm gonna go with this card's good.
I would say this card is good, but not broke or anything. Actually, it has a very interesting story. So the first time this was released, it was an effect that cost 2 mana. And that was absolutely broken. It was like one of the best cards in the game. It's banned everywhere. Then they reprinted it again, I think it was last year. And it was super good, so they ended up banning this card because of its application in a combo deck. Your card.
So they reprinted it last year, and it was the card that I was speaking about, which was the 7 mana version, which on Magic Arena I think they nerfed it to 8 mana, and in Paper Magic they just outright banned it. And that was what I was saying, like, the effect. There's a lot of cards in Magic the Gathering that have the effect take an extra turn, and although obviously each meta is different and they're not always going to be powerful, the problem is, if the meta allows them to be powerful, they are absolutely busted regardless of their mana cost. Even at 7 mana, they are broken. Because again, if you're a combo deck, you just set up what you need, you play the card to get an extra turn, and then you finish what you need to do in your extra turn that you just gained. So extra turns in Magic is very powerful.
Eviscerate. 1 black and 3 of any color. Destroy target creature. Oh my god.
This is a good example of I expect him to say that the card is powerful because in Hearthstone the comparison would be Assassinate, which costs 5 mana. So this would be a 4 mana. However, this is trash. It's good in limited, like with basically Arena would be the Arena of Magic. And so in limited formats, which are basically like Arena from Hearthstone, the card is good. But in any form of competitive, the card is trash. There's the average amount players are willing to pay for this type of effect is around 3 mana. And obviously, 3 mana is the maximum they're fine with playing it on competitive. The average amount of mana that you will see in competitive to play these type of effects is around 2 to 1 mana. That's around the average. So 4 mana for this effect is really bad in Magic.
So simple. So without knowing any form of removal in Magic, I'm gonna have to just base this probably on more on Hearthstone as well. If I had to spend 4 mana to remove a card in Hearthstone, I don't think that would see play. We currently have that in the game and it doesn't see play. But with Magic, you can also block creatures with minions. So this card gets worse because of that ability. I also don't know how powerful other removals are, which is why this card could be actually just decent. Okay, I'm gonna go with this card's average. I don't think this would be the best form of removal, but it does its job if you need to just remove a creature.
Okay, this card is pretty bad. It was a bit unfair because you don't have the whole context, right? But the reason this card is pretty bad is because it's very overcosted. Like, you can have the same effect for much cheaper. Like, I would say that the baseline for destroying a creature is like 2 mana. For 4 and sorcery, this is just...
Oh yeah, also the sorcery part.
I was
Because in Magic, because sorcery you can only play it on your turn, and without it being reactive. So if they're doing something on your turn, you can't really respond with this. And normally the norm for removal is it needs to be instant, or they have to have like this very powerful effect attached to it.
In my head, I was like, this looks like a basic card they would give you to Hearthstone just so you can build your deck.
It is.
It is. It is a
basic
basic card.
Yes.
I was actually leaning towards it so bad, but I think you got you're in my head after that one card.
Wait, but it's supposed to be analyze the card, not analyze me.
No, it's not you. It's more like I'm looking at the card in a vacuum, but I'm second guessing myself because of the previous experience that I had. Like
I traumatized you.
Yeah, you traumatized me.
All right, last card.
Elite Spellbind.
Oh, this card.
1 white and
I don't actually know how good this card is. I didn't play this specific format. I did get it for my commander, although I ended up not actually playing it. Again, mostly because commander is a multiplayer format, so looking at a single opponent's hand is generally not that amazing. But in 1v1s, I'm pretty sure this card would be kind of powerful in standard. Right? My gut feeling is that this card was, I'm not going to say broken because I don't know the format of the time, but I'm pretty sure this would be, at the very least, a very highly contended card. Like, if you were playing against white, this probably was in it.
2 of any color. When Elite Spellbinders enters the battlefield, look at your target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land card from it, or as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. So wait, hold on. What does exile mean though?
So basically the idea is that it's a 3/1 flying for 3, and when you play it, you look at their hand and make one of their cards cost 2 more.
So this is actually very interesting because against a very particular deck, this can throw off their combo by quite a bit. And because the way mana works in Magic, you could potentially delay their turn by a lot, because if they need to find 2 more lands to cast their whole combo in 1 turn, this is very powerful. 3 mana for a 3/1 that's flying is also decent. This is like, I mean, even in like the early game, this card's fine just because the 2 more mana on a very cheap card is actually more relevant than on a more expensive card. And you get to look at your opponent's hand.
Yes.
So you get to see every card they have in their hand.
Yes.
Okay, this has to be like broken. Like this
Not
has
broken,
to be like
but
one of
powerful.
the best cards in the game.
So first of all, I'm very disappointed you didn't notice, but this card is known for having one of the best arts in all of Magic.
Oh, it's you.
Yeah.
It's you, right?
Yes, it is me.
That's awesome, dude. Holy shit, that's so cool. Sorry, I'm so focused on the text. That's actually amazing. They gave you a card. That's awesome. Oh, this is the card you got for winning the world champion.
Yes.
Jim.
Yes, it is.
That's awesome. Wow. Dude, congrats. Did you get to work with them on this card?
I did, yeah. Like there was a lot of back and forth on what, like they gave me a bunch of options. I chose this kind of ability.
Okay, so then my analysis has to be correct that this card's broken. Like it's the best. It's so good.
It's not broken. It is good. It is. Obviously, I'm biased, right? But I think it is a good card. It sees a lot of play, even in older formats. And what you said is basically correct, right? Like sometimes you just play this on turn 3, and like they only had 1 card that cost 3 to play, right? So you take that away, and then their next turn is just nothing because that card now costs 5. This card, I would say, is pretty good. It sees a lot of play.
That's so cool that your card's good.
Yeah, I'm very happy that
most cards that were custom made for the champions are busted. Dark Confidant, Snapcaster, this card, Are there others? There's probably others. I can't remember right now.
It's good.
Do they do this every year?
They started doing it the year before I won, and then there will be one next year for last year's World Champion. So
You won at the perfect time then.
I did.
You're timeless now. That's awesome. But anyways, dude, thanks again for doing this. This is
Okay, that was interesting. Not what I was expecting. I was expecting different cards to show up. Obviously he threw some fruit, but he did pick some really good cards to put in, right? The Mana Dark was a very good idea. The big statted creature. Okay, yeah, that was a cool one. Okay, thank you, Rarran. How do you say it? Rarran, for the video to react. A very cool one. Yeah, it was interesting. The format, the difference between Magic and Hearthstone is pretty big. Anyway, that was my reaction. Thank you for that. Was a kind of a special one because I do like Magic and I do like seeing how people that are not in Magic do react to Magic, especially from other people like Hearthstone and whatnot. I was actually curious to see his reaction. So yeah, that was my reaction. Thank you all for watching. This has been jorgiguel, and until next time, bye bye.